Hey everyone, so this is a bit of a departure from, well, pretty much anything I've ever done on this channel ever. Um, what this is going to be is it's going to be a review of the Dungeons and Dragons movie, and I realize that this is probably way after the fact, and I'm really not going to convince anybody else out there to go and see the movie that hasn't already decided they were going to go see the movie, and I'm not going to dissuade. I'm not going to change everybody's mind. If you've seen the movie, you're going to see the movie, and you have your own thoughts. This is kind of like what I wanted to say as far as my thoughts go, and I actually wrote this down. And if you've watched my channel for a long time, you know that I don't I don't normally write anything out. I tend to just speak my mind and let my mind take me to where I'm going to go. But recently, I've been watching a few YouTube channels and stuff like that, and I've seen people that know how to write and then present how they write well, if you will. And I'm always kind of impressed by that. And they say you can't teach an old dinosaur new tricks or whatever, but um, as luck would have it, if when the moment strikes me, I can write, and I feel like I can write pretty well. So I had a lot of thoughts after I got out of the Dungeons and Dragons movie, and a lot of things that just made me think and made me think about my own gaming and what have you. And yeah, I mean, and I put them down to paper, and I didn't know if I was going to share it or not. I didn't know if I was just going to put it out there like a blog post or whatever, or if I was going to do this. But then I decided, you know what? If I do this and I like it and I like how it comes out, and I mean, and if I get some interaction from the people like you that have been, watching my stuff for all these years, yeah, I mean, like, why not? And maybe this is something I'll do more of, when the mood strikes me and I want to write stuff about. So here we go. This is all been obviously an introduction, but this is what I wrote out, and this is like my own personal review and observation as far as the Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves, the movie. So, my introduction to D&D is murky as far as the actual time it happened, but not the actual way it occurred. And a story I've retold over and over, which I am sure the memory of which has been romanticized by me, both with and without my knowledge. My older brother came home one day after school and told me about playing a very cool game about magic swords and wizards and dragons. And I assumed he was talking about a new Atari game, which I was sitting in the family room playing at the time. But when he told me that it was something you played with pencils and paper and dice, I was blown away. I just had to own the game. I asked my mother to find it for me, and she ordered the books from J.C. Penney's, and they made it into my grubby hands several weeks later. The first time I played the game is, for lack of a better word, troubling. Not the actual playing, mind you, but who ran the game. My parents had divorced when I was young, and my mother was remarried. My stepfather was a wonderful human being, and he had children from his first marriage. Occasionally, they would come and visit and stay at our house. His youngest son was a year older than me, and we would hang out. And I can honestly say I was never very good friends with him. He was an angry kid, and he loved to talk about how cool he was and how uncool me and my friends were, and he was just kind of a jerk. However, he knew how to run a game of D&D, and he had what I now know to be the Holmes rules. He had me and my brother roll up characters and sent us into a dungeon. I remember almost nothing about that session other than my character was a fighter. His name was Bram, and he killed a couple of evil cultists. Eventually, he was eaten by a dragon, and that was that. It was a very quick and brutal session, but I was hooked. After that, I just started playing D&D with my friends at school as often as I possibly could. I made my world from scratch and made hundreds of dungeons to throw at them. So many weekends were full of crazy adventures and a lot of great memories. But that isn't what I want to talk about. I'm here to tell you about the D&D movie. I just wanted to tell you about my background with Dungeons and Dragons to give you an idea of where I am coming from. So the D&D movie hit with a trailer. that made me immediately think Marvel movie. More specifically, it made me think Guardians of the Galaxy Marvel movie. Led Zeppelin background music, check. Random assortment of oddball characters, check. Quippy dialogue, check. Small little glimpses of monsters, locations, and magic that would place it firmly in the D&D world, check. It looked it good. It sounded good, and it looked like it was something right up my alley. Now, during this process, the whole OGL Hasbro thing happened, and there was much hand wringing and consternation. And I'm not going to dive into that issue here, or probably at all. Suffice it to say, there was an upheaval within the fan base that called for a boycott of the movie and anything that may put gold into Hasbro's coffers. People began picking apart the trailers, started making assumptions about the casting, and YouTube channels squeezed as much outrage and hate views as they possibly could out of the whole mess. When the OGL decision was changed, there was an outcry of, "We won!" And for the most part, the angries scuttled back to their homes to await the newest thing they could unload their hate upon. And now the movie's out. And here they come. The angries are out. But again, I am not here to refute anyone's dislike of a movie. If you went and hated all 134 minutes of it, that is absolutely your opinion and is just as valid as anyone else's. Even if your hate is based upon exterior reasons that have absolutely nothing to do with the actual movie itself, that's completely fine. But let's go ahead and let's talk about the actual movie. And I should just say right now, lots and lots and lots of spoilers are ahead. So if you haven't seen the movie, you don't want anything spoiled, now would be the time to, stop watching this video, go see the movie, and then come back to this. All right. So the movie opens up with the classic take on the get to know you montage. Some big awful thug, was it a bugbear or something, is being led into a giant ice prison in the middle of nowhere, and being given the D&D version of the Hannibal Lecter treatment. They lead him to a cell in which we have our two main heroes, Edgin Darvis, who's played by Chris Pine, and Holga Kilgore, played by Michelle Rodriguez, doing their best impressions of Star-Lord and Gamora from Guardians of the Galaxy. Evil bugbear guy gets fresh with Holga in the cell and interrupts her meal. She's eating a potato. Remember that. So he gets his legs broken for his trouble while Edgin knits a couple of mittens nonchalantly off to the side. After a brief moment of explaining that they are in prison for stealing, and Edgin gets to sing to show that he is a bard, they go to their parole hearing where Edgin gets to do a giant exposition done talking about his time and with a virtuous group called the Harbors. If you follow Forgotten Realms, you know what that is. The fact that his wife was killed by the evil red wizards of Thay, and that he became a thief because he gave up on being virtuous. Somewhere along that way, Holga came into his life to be his partner in crime and his newborn daughter's surrogate mother. Eventually, they had a band of thieves that included a sorcerer named Simon, played by Justice Smith, a rogue named Forge, played by Hugh Grant, and Sophina, played by Daisy Head, who is a wizard. Now, Sophina wants them to pull a job to steal from the Harbors. Edgin won't do it until Forge says that there is a magical artifact in the magic vault that can bring a person back to life. Edgin does it to save his wife, and he leaves behind his now older daughter, who has been complicit with all of their thievery to this point. Of course, things go bad, and Edgin and Holga are captured, but not before Edgin makes Forge promise to take care of his kid, Kira, played by Chloe Coleman. And I should have mentioned also, I apologize, Forge is played by Hugh Grant. All right, so Edgin and Holga use one of their parole board members to facilitate their escape from the prison in a very funny and exciting moment, and they make their way home. They soon find out that Forge has done pretty well for himself and has been taking good care of Kira, but he has also been feeding her lies to turn her away from her father. And soon discover that Forge and Sophina have planned on everyone else getting caught the whole time. Simon was also supposed to be captured, but he escaped. Forge has connived his way into becoming the Lord of Neverwinter, and he has kept Sophina, now revealed to be a Red Wizard of Thay, on as his advisor. He captures our heroes once again and plans on sending them back to prison for the reward money, but Sophina arranges to have them executed. Instead of getting their heads chopped off, they escape, of course, and track down their sorcerer friend Simon, who has been reduced to casting cantrips for a crowd while he steals their belongings. They need more help, And Simon has a thing for a tiefling druid who lives with a bunch of elves, whose emerald enclave is having their forest destroyed by the evil rulers of Neverwinter for its resources, which is really never explained, or at least I didn't catch on. Doric, played by Sophia Lillis, has wild shape abilities that allow her to become a horse, or a deer, or an axebeak, or a worm, and of course an owlbear, as you've probably seen in the trailers. She agrees to join them on their mission to break into Neverwinter to get back Edgin's daughter, grab a bunch of treasure, and possibly overthrow Forge. There is an absolutely fantastic moment for the druid to shine as she becomes a housefly and then spies on the magic vault that is going to hold all the treasure for the upcoming High Sun Games, including the Tablet of Reawakening that is the artifact that was going to be saving Edgin's dead wife. She changes shape several times after she is discovered, eventually escaping the city to give the rest of the party the bad news. The vault is guarded by Morden Kanan's seal, a magic that they do not have the ability to dispel, except that they have heard of another magical artifact, the Helm of Dysfunction, and Holga's ancestors had fought over it at one time. So they dig up a bunch of corpses and use Speak with Dead to ask them a bunch of questions, a little bit of comedy that probably lasts too long. Plus, I have seen this thing in the Holy Grail or on The Simpsons, but for the younger crowd, the jokes are probably more fresh. Eventually, they hear that a paladin by the name of Zank, played by, and I apologize, Regé Jean Page, I'm probably saying that incorrectly, was given the helmet. So they go track him down, and he agrees to take them to the helm, which is, of course, in the Underdark, because we need a dungeon. At this point, I can tell you, if this was my D&D campaign and I was running it, my players would be getting annoyed with the go here, go here, go here, go here. But the trip to the Underdark was going to happen, and the movie needed a dragon, and so now we get one. A big, fat, pudgy one, red one, named Themberchad. Along the way, they fight some Fey assassins, escape some intellect devours, and use the Dragonfire's breath to make their escape. This was an enjoyable little diversion that probably took too long as well to sum up, but after this, Zank leaves the group, which for whatever reason, which was a little sad because he was a really fun character. There is a small side story for Simon with having to believe himself to make the Helm of Dysfunction work, which anyone who took Plot 101 will know that it won't happen until he really needs it. So they have to wing it as far as how they're going to sneak into the treasure vault. The group uses their collective magic and abilities to sneak into Neverwinter and the vault for that matter, but the vault is empty. And they are captured again, of course. And now, when they have them dead to rights and they can just kill them off, Sophina goes back to her Bond villain roots and decides to just put them into the deadly High Sun Games where they can meet a more theatrical demise. The High Sun Games let us see famous monsters like the Gelatinous Cube and the Displacer Beast and the Mimic. We also get to see the original group from the old D&D cartoon that I don't know why they gave Bobby the Barbarian an axe when he always uses a club. The true nature of Sophina is revealed, and she begins using an evil artifact that was the whole point of the original heist at the very beginning, to turn everyone who is at the High Sun Games into an undead army. Ford shows his true evil colors when he threatens Kira's life, but he is done in by a potato, remember that, the potato, to the face. They have a big final battle against Sophina, where there are some very painfully obvious things that happen here. Everyone gets their moment to shine, humorous quips get quipped, and they pretend to be paralyzed by a time stop spell and get the drop on the evil wizard. And then the Owlbear Druid does her best imitation of Hulk versus Loki to the wizard, and then they win. But Holga was stabbed by a red wizard blade during the battle, and she is dying. The magical tablet can only bring one person back from the dead, so Edgin sacrifices the possibility of bringing back his wife to save the woman who is basically the only mother Kira has ever known. Forge gets captured by a returning Zank, and we have a funny bookend moment for our beloved Rogue to try and escape the prison we saw at the beginning of the movie during his parole hearing, only to find out that the method that was used before has been blocked. And that's it. They leave it a little bit open for further adventures, but there's no big final credit scene to show off the real big bad that would be the focus of the next movie. All right, so there you go. That was a big giant. That's why I said spoilers, obviously, because I kind of just went over the entire movie. But let's just start off by saying I enjoyed the movie a lot. I did think it lasted a little bit longer than it needed to. 134 minutes, or over 2 hours. That's a lot. But that is pretty much my opinion about most movies. The visual effects were great, the sound was amazing, and it was very cool to see some of the Forgotten Realms on the screen. The cast was also very well done. but they didn't give him much to do. The scene where Edgin has his flashbacks to his daughter being raised by Holga and the pain and realization of having to finally truly give up on his wife if he wants to save his friend, it was etched on Pine's face, and he did a really good job. But other than that, he really only had to kind of just play bemused and bewildered. Rodriguez will always play a strong, no nonsense character well. It is what baseball players call their wheelhouse. Smith has had a very little growth to show, other than the Helm of Attunement thing, and Lillis had even less. But they both played their parts dutifully. Head plays the maniacally evil wizard, fairly subdued, and probably could have chewed the scenery more for my liking. And Page was absolutely perfect as the paladin. And actual D&D players should take note. This is how you play a lawful good character. You're confident, you're purposeful, and you're willing to help others reach their true potential. Of all the characters here, though, the one that gets to shine is Hugh Grant. And I've seen this said repeatedly over and over and over again. He actually does his best to chew the scenery and seems to be having actual fun with the role. It also helps that Hugh Grant is actually a very good actor. Not isn't saying any of the preceding actors aren't good, but I'm just saying he's a very good actor with decades of stage, TV, and film credits on his resume. I sincerely hope if there is a sequel, they find a way to bring him back and have him be a part of it. Maybe give him, some sort of redemption angle that he can pull off. I do have some issues with the movie. For one, I was never able to get worried about any of the heroes. Even when Holga gets stabbed at the end, about midway through the movie, I had this conscious thought as I'm watching it. They can't actually bring the mom back from the dead. Edgin would retire. And then I realized that someone would have to use the tablet to bring someone back that we've spent the last 2 hours with. I first thought maybe it would be Edgin and his daughter would have to do it, and which I think would have been cooler, honestly. Kira deciding to forgive her father because there's this whole plot line of like Kira having a great deal of resentment towards her father about the fact that he's hung up on his dead wife and her mom, but then forgive him and then save his life instead of bringing his mom back. But then, of course, we'd have this whole arc of situation where Edgin would say, "Why did you do this? You should have saved your mom," that sort of thing. But anyway, just as soon as I saw Hulk on the ground, I knew what route they were going. My dad always called this the James Bond effect. I've watched nearly every James Bond movie with my dad, and we enjoy them. But when I was younger, he wants to assuage my fears over my favorite secret agent getting eaten by a shark when he said, "The movie is named after him. He isn't going to die." I mean, until recently. That kind of ruined movies a little for me at that moment. But it also made me really enjoy awesome movies more. Like Raiders of the Lost Ark is so expertly crafted that I actually think the hero can get crushed by a giant boulder. And I know the grandeur of what I am saying has smashed its way into my brain, and I'm allowing myself to believe in what I'm seeing. And that just didn't happen with Honor Among Thieves. I also felt like the script didn't allow for much time for the actors to, act. This is a very common thing for an action movie, though, so it's a pretty minor quibble. A few more humanizing moments for Holga, and anything for Doric to do other than change into some animals would have been nice. I mean, at the end, we have a very unsatisfying moment where the tired old cliche of the nerd who finally stands up for himself, finally impresses the girl. But that's just lazy and boring storytelling. Speaking of lazy storytelling, we have this cute moment when Holga goes back to her old home and meets up with her ex-husband, who is a halfling or a gnome maybe, and is played completely straight by Bradley Cooper. That scene is great. There is discomfort and awkwardness between the two of them, but genuine caring and kindness, and I really liked it. However, it is a weird throw in here to where he gives her back a walking stick that she had given him, and then, of course, the walking stick just happens to be a super powerful magic item, and the sorcerer can use it to get all sorts of jams later on. But, whatever. It doesn't matter. I also felt I was missing on something I really wanted. I remember when I first watched Fellowship of the Ring, and then when they went into Moria, part of me wanted them to just stay right there, searching that dungeon, finding treasure, discovering the secrets it contained. This is what Dungeons and Dragons has always been to me, a group of people going into some hole in the ground and looking for treasure. And I realized that wouldn't be much of a movie, and this mashup of Marvel productions set in D&D world is exactly what the studio would greenlight. But I can always hope that maybe someday we'll have a true Dungeons and Dragons searching a dungeon adventure. A few of the more common complaints I've seen had nothing to do with the movie at all. They didn't credit Gary Gygax or Dave Arneson, which is deafening in its omission. It has been literally decades since they have had anything to do with the publishing of D&D, but it would have been nice for the movie to give them just some sort of nod. Maybe it was a situation where the lawyers stepped in and wouldn't allow it, or maybe they just didn't care to do it. I don't get the outrage behind it because the old guys who know who made the game, and girls for that matter, know that we know the movie wouldn't exist if it wasn't for those two people. But I also think that it would have been, would have liked. I also think they would have liked the movie a lot if they had seen it. Maybe they could have just said dedicated to them or something like that. But whatever. There have been a small but vocal group of people who have tried to dissect the rules of what they're seeing, which, let me go on record here, is exceedingly ridiculous. D&D has been and is still a game where the players and referees are encouraged to play fast and loose with the rules. This isn't a board game where everything has to be played to the letter. If you want your druid to be able to shape change into an owlbear, you let them. If you want to be able to dig up a bunch of dead bodies one night, to speak with corpses, track down a paladin the next day, and then soon after crawl into the Undertech to fight a fat dragon, knock yourself out. You can do that. Anyone who's trying to discern spell lists or hit points or travel times or whatever, whatever you see on the screen just needs to relax and watch a movie. Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves is a very good movie. It entertained me and my whole family, and it was a fun way to spend a few hours on a Sunday afternoon. It was something that I truly thought would never be created. I mean, we have one of the nice things about this is there has never, ever, ever been another D&D movie ever made before this one. As we walked out of the theater and headed to the car, my son was talking to me about all of his favorite moments, and it occurred to me that even though he had sucked down a giant cup of lemonade, he had managed to stay put throughout the entire movie without a restroom break. And that's pretty high praise right there. But higher praise came later. It was when he said, "Hey, Dad, you think me and you can play some D&D this weekend?" And that was worth the price of admission and a whole lot more. So there you go. That's it. That's all I got to say about the Dungeons and Dragons movie. Did you see the movie? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Did you think it was amazing? I'd love to know. Go ahead and post those comments. I'll respond to them when I see them. Thank you very much for watching this different thing that I've done. And maybe I'll do more in the future when I take the time to write something out. But until that next time, take care of yourself, be good to yourself, and happy gaming.